Hi guys, I'm Charlie Tolhurst and welcome to the show. Hello everyone, I'm Charlie Tolhurst. This is the Charlie Tolhurst show for today, the 27th of the Hello everyone. Sorry, we're live now. That did pick up there as well. Hello everyone, I'm Chai Tiles. Welcome to Chai Tiles show for today, the 27th of December 2022, a year in which we've seen many things, hence why it's called Highlight Show, because there is so much to talk about tonight. Me and Zach are going to go through all the highlights from 2022, from the political year, sporting year, you name it. I'm joined by Labour Party supporter Zach James to round it up. Hello, Zach.
Hello, Charlie. Hello.
Well, we have got so much to digest this year. We done it last year, and we had, well, quite simply, a lot of news. This year, obviously, though, we are going to be talking about the highlights of the year. There is also some changes to my show, which will be coming into effect for 2023. And we're going to explain some of the new segments later on the show. But we're going to get the highlights now over and done with. Well, this year was dominated by the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the biggest armed conflict by one nation on another nation since the Second World War. President Vladimir Putin of Russia authorizing a special military operation in February this year. In his words, to denazify Ukraine. Well, he certainly bombed the living daylights out of Ukraine over these last 10 months. Huge numbers of casualties have been reported, civilian losses. It has been a horrifying year for the Ukrainian population. And their president, Volodymyr Zelensky, has shown pure leadership and determination to steer his country through one of the biggest global conflicts since the Second World War, since the German surrender to the Allies in 1945 in Berlin. I mean, Zach, this year has been full of highlights, including the most notable one being President Putin's invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, let's start on that. It's been one of the biggest stories of the year, and it's still going to be a story as we go into 23, no doubt about it. You're wondering, how did we get here? Well, first of all, with President Putin, we've known him to be, sort of some, a threat for quite a long time. I mean, in the way he runs the country is quite aggressive in nature. He called it a communist regime. He's got his own state TV. He's got his own, dictatorship in many ways. He's got his own fake elections. But that's not what caused the war in Ukraine. What caused it was his belief that he would want to reunite part of the Soviet Union together, what it was before, it all got torn apart and everything like that. He's obviously given this old style belief of everything. And he always believed that Ukraine has always caused a threat to Russia, in many ways, including the threat that it might possibly one day join NATO. And Russia has this beef with NATO for such a long time. But it goes back a while as well, which is 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea, which was part of Ukraine at the time, just freely took that over with no resistance. And that clearly is on the mind. It also is annexed part of the Donbass and Luhansk area before that as well. But he really wanted to take the whole of Ukraine in many ways. He really wanted to unify Ukraine with Russia. And to get there, he started using these fake claims of false flags. Then they had to build up on the borders. And then he went for his plan. It took a while. With the US intelligence war right, after all. It did take a little while. But he got there in the end. And so far, from day one, he has failed miserably. The intelligence was saying that after all, the expectation was that he could take Kiev within 2 to 3 days. He failed miserably on that. He only got far from there. He started bombing the other areas and started targeting civilian infrastructure a long time afterwards. But he did have success for a little while. I mean, the Luhansk and Donbass area. He had success with Kherson before, Zaporizhia, other areas as well in the Donbass and Luhansk region, where he tried to legally annex it off there. But to be fair to him, he's been a complete and utter failure. That's not been fair to him because he is a failure. But because the Ukrainian army has shown resilience all the way throughout this war. They've managed to plan. It's probably helped because of the weapons that have been provided to them from Ukraine to UK to US, Germany, others. I mean, many of the countries give them weapons. Some have been better than others in providing them help, but it may have been the help of the Allies and the Ukrainian resilience that has meant that this war, rather than being over in 3 days, has been continuing for 9 months, pretty much now. And it just shows the resilience of the Ukrainian army, Ukrainian people, and a unity on the side of President Volodymyr Zelensky, who's had who honestly, despite going through torrid times, has shown real leadership, has shown passionate, has shown unity. There's not a lot of opposition to him at the moment. Probably not surprising why, given the fact that he's been these days to be a model like what Winston Churchill was in the 1940s during the Second World War. So it's been an incredible year for Volodymyr Zelensky. He's been an up and down at times, but he's shown unity for his country. He's shown resilience. He's shown a passion, and he's stood up for what's right and what's to believe in. And he's unified figures from the left to the right, in just showing that true determination. And long live may Ukraine continue to be a free, fair, thriving democracy with the freedom to self-determination rather than being dictated to by Russian idiots and Russian useless, dictators in Russia who think that Soviet Union is the best way to go, a land full of rule. It hasn't been the case. And hopefully it will continue to be the case where Russia lose their influence in the world. They're having less and less influence. Their power, they're being shut out by most allies, if not all. They've made new ones. They've also lost many. And the crucial thing is that with those that they've lost, is that those who have turned against them continue to, squeeze the Russian power into a state where, the people turn against Vladimir Putin. They've not managed to do that so far in many ways, but there is signs of it. And a person like Putin can shut it down all easily. He may escalate this war even further into next year. Who knows? I hope he doesn't. But it will not be without further consequences. And hopefully, whilst this continues on, he will realise that, everything, there's a whole bunch of powerful allies that we have that continue to demonstrate leadership and give Ukraine support, giving Zelensky support, giving the people of Ukraine support, and removing areas that we shouldn't be dependent on. We're losing our dependency on Russian oil, which is a good thing. Some ways we could do well with our own energy independence in other areas. But at the end of the day, as much as he tries to affect us, other countries in terms of oil and gas and our energy solutions, he's still failing. We're paying a price ourselves, but it's to help worldwide, the situation in Ukraine. Because without Ukraine, we're screwed in many ways. So this has been, a hell of a year for Ukraine. For Ukraine people, it's hell. But they've just shown determination, brilliance, durability in difficult times. And I'm sure they will continue to be as we go through next year. Hopefully, next up for Ukraine is taking Crimea back, because that would be one of the biggest achievements for the country in a long, long time. And no matter how much they've been threatened or continue to be threatened, I still think it's a good possibility that 2023 is the year where Crimea returns back into Ukrainian hands again.
I have to say that this year for Ukraine has been the toughest year since World War II. There's no question. I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit later on about World War II, actually, because we do have a new segment coming to my show where I'm going to be talking about political history, where we talk about a special report on a historical political event that happened many years ago. So I thought I'd add that to my show. But to say what's happened in Ukraine this year has been a tragedy. Is what Russia's actions, by the way, this year have been condemned worldwide by all members of NATO and all countries around the world, particularly not say all countries, because we know that there's some countries that have been on the supporting end of it all, particularly Belarus. President Alexander Lukashenko is very good friends with Vladimir Putin of Russia. And could even Belarus be dragged into this conflict? I very well hope not. But yes, it's been a tough year for Ukraine. But we're going to go over some other political highlights now before we dive into the news in the invasion. There's been lots of other news, Zach, hasn't there, this year? Lots that has caught the eye of the political journalists.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the highlights this year, in my perspective, as well, has been the year where it's been the year of complete and utter failure for governments here in the UK. Let's take away the Conservative Party that's been running the government. I've never known a year where we've had 3 different prime ministers within a year. Let's start with that. It all started really with Boris Johnson's downfall. We learned more of Partygate. We learned a little about it before the year began, really, where we had that leaked video of Allegra Stratton joking about parties. That pretty much confirmed it. And yeah, it kicked off from there. The sense of feeling was that, a lot of people have given up their lives during coronavirus, really. A lot of people have given up, seeing their families, and to see, a politician breaking the rules that they set was the last straw for them.
Not just one politician. Think about the other one that also went on I'm a Celebrity.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one that played because a key part in making decisions. Although he was kind of not implicated for a while until we got to the interesting bit where he decided to go off and have an affair.
Matt Hancock, that is what we're referring to there.
Yes, Matt Hancock. He implicated himself later on in the pandemic, especially this year as well, where he was, I have to say, although many people thought he was a dick in many ways, he was still competent in managing the situation. And then he completely ruined it and trashed his own reputation by getting caught on camera having an affair and breaking his own guidance. So that was the point of it there. But yeah, I mean, we went through Boris Johnson this year, who broke all sorts of rules. Actually, was the first sitting prime minister to be criminally fined in the name of law, and still kept on going afterwards despite no competition whatsoever. But what was Boris Johnson's downfall was the fact that he allowed a sex pest basically to run basically part of the whipping process. That, after all what happened with Partygate and everything, that was the camel that broke the straw for Conservative MPs. And then, came through Liz Truss, who went through the usual procedures of democratic vote by Conservative members who represent 0.001% of this country. She won with their votes and completely destroyed the country within a few months of taking power. That utterly really bad so-called mini budget, that wasn't actually a mini budget, it was more than just a budget, came with tax cuts, lots of spending, and increased mortgages, really, to be fair. The pound went through the tank. The banks had to bail out some of the pension systems, and we had U-turn after U-turn after U-turn. And then we had the infamous pretty much House of Commons incident where the chief whips were resigning, then weren't resigning, and then there was a whipping vote on fracking that, went to pear-shaped. And it resulted in the loss of confidence in Liz Truss. 44 days in the job, she went because the party lost confidence in her. And then we had to parachute Rishi Sunak in because after Boris Johnson nearly made a political comeback in many ways, but that didn't happen. He decided, for the best sake of himself, he decided it was not worth it. Rishi Sunak was the second favourite, the other one that got criminally charged by the Met Police earlier this year, and he's sort of had a quiet, run so far. Not many achievements I could think of at the top of my head, but so he's made an effort to actually run the country. But whether that continues or not is going to be another thing. There will probably be one or two scandals that he may go through next year, but who knows? Who knows? But yes, it's not been a good year if you're associated with the Conservative Party, who end the year about 20 points behind the polls. It's disappointing for them. And it's a year where Keir Starmer has seemed to cut through to the public in some ways or another as well. And then as you said, we got Matt Hancock going on I'm a Celebrity, which, pretty much summed up the public mood of it all as well. But yeah, in terms of that, politics in the UK, it's been a bit of a hell of a year. And, we're still having competence in charge, basically.
It's an interesting year, Zach. I have to say the UK has been full of surprises, and the House of Commons has been literally full of eruptions this year, with legislation going past and MPs debating. Remember that debate with Boris Johnson in the chamber and Keir Starmer? I think there was one debate where Starmer and Johnson had a big old clash on Priti Patel. I remember as well. Priti Patel, there was a big clash on her earlier this year over the bullying claims. There was also Starmer and Johnson having big clashes during the pandemic, and also as well Liz Truss having a complete and utter failure as Prime Minister, delivering. I have to say, I think the tax cuts were just done too early. I think that's what happened. And then we had, obviously, Rishi Sunak coming in, who we are going to get onto a bit later on in my show, where I apparently have to nominate him for something. Not going to tell you what it was, but yeah. It was clear that this country felt broken. And also, as well, the huge numbers of migrants coming across this year. I completely think they're unacceptable. Are we controlling our borders? That's the question. But the final bit I wanted to cover on now, on this highlights, is the United States. We're going to talk about the United States now. Obviously, there has been a huge snowstorm. So I just want to say to everyone in the US who's experiencing this extremely, extremely bitterly cold weather, my thoughts are with all you out there. And this must be a horrible time that you're going through at the moment, because there's been blizzards, there's been heavy snowfall. I know that President Biden has warned of mass disruption across the United States. Many governors are probably updating their states and updating their citizens on what's happening right now. But the highlights this year have been Hurricane Ian, causing one of the biggest hurricanes to hit Florida in many years. And also, as well, we had the midterm elections, which saw Ron DeSantis winning a huge majority in Florida. We also saw many new governors taking shape. The House of Congress being reshuffled and reformed as well. And there's been other highlights in America as well, but not with also the fact that there has been several shootings this year as well in America. Gun laws certainly been on the cards in the United States. Zach, what have you made so far to the political highlights in the US?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, you could say, a bit of a mixed year as well. It's been led by inflation, a lot of serious issues, inflation, the cost of living, what it's like to actually live at the moment. So the expectation was that going into this year that, Joe Biden's Democrat Party would lose quite significantly in the midterm elections. That was the expectation by others. And yeah, they did lose. But it wasn't not them losing wasn't the story of the midterm elections. It was how much they lost by. And actually, when you look at the results, it seemed like they actually didn't lose as much as they expected to lose. Which was extraordinary, think about it. They were expected to lose by, 30 seat majority, 30, 40 seats majority. It could have been a massive Republican wave in the conference. But this year it hasn't not materialized at all. It comes down to a number of things, really, to be fair. Candidate quality has been one. Donald Trump's influence has been key in most of these candidate selections. And it's, in some ways as well, it appears that people are fed up. starting, the general effect is people start to get fed up with Trump-like conservative candidates. Conservative candidates, you could say, still work well as if they're not, cherry picked and chewing the Trump line. But if your alliance with Donald Trump in many areas, election deniers lost their elections. Some did, some won, but most of them didn't, thankfully. You had in the U.S. Senate where Democrats performed much better than expected as well. They actually gained a seat in the Senate, with John Fetterman being elected to Pennsylvania, and defeating Mehmet Oz, who was a candidate that originally lived in New Jersey. Actually, you're trying to represent Pennsylvania in many ways. It was an out of touch move for the Republicans to do that. You also had Doug Mastriano lose big to Josh Shapiro, who honestly ran.
Yeah, we know Josh Shapiro. I've watched him do. If you've never known Josh Shapiro is, I just want to say, actually no, I think it might have been. I think that was Ben Shapiro I'm on about.
Ben Shapiro.
I think that might have been someone else I was referring to. Yeah, but if you've seen Ben Shapiro, I've actually watched him on a lot of conservative columns. Like he had an interview once with Andrew Neil on the BBC, and I have to say it was a very interesting interview. I think he was trying to defend Trump on something.
Yeah, it must have been something like that. He obviously criticised, the media overall and that sort of thing, the BBC, and thought Andrew Neil was left wing, which is a bit strange as well. But yeah, in terms of overall, Biden's performance approval has been very low this year. But what's put off Republicans from getting a huge majority was the alliance Trump. Now, what's happened is that there has now been a proper, it looks like we're starting to get a breakthrough in terms of who could be the next Republican candidate. That candidate seems to be Ron DeSantis at the moment. He has been governing Florida for the last 4 years. He won by the skin of his teeth in 2018 for the governor's race and won by 20 points, re-elected by 20 points this time around. It appears to see that Republicans really like him. They really do like him. They all running to him to be the sort of candidate that Republicans should run in the next election. I expect that Ron DeSantis probably will be making moves in the next year to run for presidency as well. Trump's influence is still large in the Republican Party. Whether we really start to see him start to lose that influence is we're seeing signs of it. But whether he starts to lose it even further is going to be key in the new year as well. But yeah, I mean, in terms of there's been other matters as well outside of politics. There's also the rise in gun violence, the rise in crime. We still have some horrific shootings. The nightclubs, the schools, gun laws have all been debated this year, and it's been the fact that we still talk about gun shootings in schools, killing kids and all that sort of thing is a terrible state in America. Obviously, they all do it hide behind the Second Amendment, which to give them, which some would say, give them an excuse to do it. There's also been a big battle in terms of the January 6th investigations. That's wrapped up, but it's been a big topical year with all the investigations, the big bombshell revealings. And then there was the Mar-a-Lago raid as well with Donald Trump, where he looked like he was holding sensitive documents that should have been sent to the National Archives. That investigation is going to continue next year as well. Whether that becomes a key theme or not remains to be seen as well. But next year is going to be all about whether Kevin McCarthy, in the first days of January, can actually get the votes to become speaker. Because that currently, at the moment, he doesn't have the votes. He needs less than 4 Republicans to deflect for him to gain the speakership. He's got 5 at the moment that are not supported him, and that is enough to tank his nomination from the speakership. And that's a big issue for him as well. That is a very big issue. So control of Congress and whether the Republicans will be uniting votes, especially in the House of Representatives, it's going to be one thing. And whether they can keep their caucus together. I mean, they're already losing their caucus, if you think about it. You've got those 5 that don't support him. And then this week, you got that Republican congressman who basically lied about his background and everything and got re-elected to Congress. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see the dynamics in politics next year in America. I imagine it will be continue to be deeply divided, and there'll still be deep problems. But how far can Joe Biden get with his legislation now? What deals can he cut? Will we see a government shutdown next year? Will we see the debt ceiling and resolved next year as well? Because that's all issues that got to be resolved next year, and it's a very serious matter as well. But yeah, I mean, there's been lots of things that have been going on, especially this year. The increase in anti-Semitism as well in America with the likes of Kanye West. It's been another busy year in American politics, and 2023 is going to be no different, I think.
Yeah, and also the Harry and Meghan documentary as well, the Queen's death and everything. It sent shockwaves through this year. But all I can say is 2022 has been, for some people, a very enjoyable year. Also, COVID restriction wise as well, we've had a lot more of a normal year. But of course, at the same time, losing the Queen in the UK was a pretty dark moment for this country. So all I can say is let's hope 2023 can deliver some very interesting thrills. But we're going to go on to now and talk about In the Spotlight, because I wanted to bring this segment onto my show tonight. The reason I did was because I thought to myself, I wanted to go back in history. And I feel like this is what we're going to do on my show every week. We're going to talk about a historical event in politics that happened like either many years ago or now. Now, today's topic of conversation is the first in a little series on World War II. I'm going to be talking tonight about what started World War II, because we've seen the Russian invasion of Ukraine this year cause significant problems for the world, for obviously implications for oil and gas prices going up. But I wanted to talk about tonight how it all started in 1939 with the rise of German Chancellor Adolf Hitler going into power. Now, Hitler invaded Poland on the 1st of September 1939 and caused World War II to happen. Now, World War II was fought across 6 years, and the German invasion of Poland marked the start of Germany's war with Europe and with the West as well, by the way. There were so many types of war. Russia also joined in as well, but the German invasion of Poland was a big one for the Second World War. Now, I want to show you guys something here, because if you guys have not really covered the Second World War before, the German invasion of Poland is very similar to the Russian invasion of Ukraine for many matters. Many people use the Russian invasion of Ukraine as a means of comparing it to this one, what started off the Second World War. The German invasion of Poland was seen at the time as the real catalyst to starting World War II off. There was so many things in which you could be basically involved with. That the list really goes on and on and on. So here we go, guys. There's some pictures here of what happened in 1939. You could basically see the Luftwaffe there flying over Poland. You can see there a meeting of what appears to be some German and Polish representatives as well. And you can see the full invasion taking place as well. Now, during that period, during that war, there was a total of 59,000 casualties reported across that, including 17,000 from Nazi Germany, and also many other Polish as well died during that invasion. Zach, what was your what was your memory going back to that invasion? How do you think this compares to current war in Ukraine now, regarding the different approaches taken by Hitler and Putin?
Yeah, I suppose in many ways, the invasion of Poland at the time, Adolf Hitler came to power a few years before that, became Chancellor of Germany a few years before that. It's because, Poland used to be kind of in the German territory. So Hitler's idea, the whole reason for invading Poland, because he wanted to be a conqueror in many ways. He looked back in history, and he wanted to be a conqueror. So one of the ways to become a conqueror was to invade their neighbours, Poland at the time. They lost their territory before in history and time, between the conqueror days. So the idea was, they wanted to regain the territory they lost. And they wanted to create this big superpower so that they can rule in the east area of the world. You know, he wanted to, if necessary, he wanted to take countries, get their people that are that kind of speak the same, how culturally the same, together in many ways, as well. And in many ways it's also part of the fact that the Soviet Union invaded it because as well. I mean, Russia was also invaded Poland as well in many ways. As well in World War II, I mean, the Polish army was the fourth largest army as well in the Europe. So by Germany getting that area as well, it means they'll get access to weapons, to defense systems, as well. So it was important for Germany to get the big rule of everything like that, to get not only territory but defense systems. But obviously, as you obviously where the US, other countries, UK, and France did not like it, and it was such a serious red line for them that ultimately they declared war on Germany in the 1939, and it was history from there onwards. Germany wanted to take more territories. They would take France. They would take whatever territory they wanted. So this is the starting block for the war. But the whole reason why Hitler decided to invade Poland in the first place was to get their territory and create this little superpower. In many instances, but yeah, so it upset. It was for power. It was defense. It was trying to adapt to unite cultures. But that's not the way how you govern countries. That's, I'm afraid, at the end of the day, we know that 6 years later, from the end of the war, that it was a bad mistake to do that. He tried to do what he calls a blitzkrieg strategy of taking countries. But I don't. In many ways, it was a dispute over borders, territory, defense, and just power that involved Germany invading Poland at the end of the day and starting off this war.
I feel like, Zach, as well, this has direct links to Putin's war in Ukraine regarding blitzkrieg strategies he's attempted on Ukrainian cities.
Yeah, absolutely. And we get the sense from Putin as well, from from the past, that his background and what he's been like to grow up in, that he's wanted to unite cultures together. He thinks that culture, like Ukrainian culture, is the same as Russian culture. It ain't. But unfortunately, the Russian people, and he lives in this bubble of fear and complexity in his mind, that's what it's supposed to be. And ultimately, he still thinks that Ukraine is in the same way as Russian. So that's what half this invasion of Ukraine is all about, because at the end of the day, cultures and land and territory and superpowers and history brings it back to mind for Vladimir Putin. At the time, obviously, in 1939, that the likes of Britain and France would declare war. These days, there is a war going on in between Ukraine and Russia, but we don't get involved directly because we know these people today we've got in this age of digital technology. We know the consequences of getting involved directly in wars. So that's why we're, instead of getting our troops, our army involved in there, we know the we know the consequence not to. We also know the consequences, like some nuclear weapons, chemical weapons are involved. So yeah, this is serious. And it's a comparison well made, but we can, based on the lessons of World War, we can adapt strategies. Other countries can adapt strategy to know how to, bring an end to wars, but also, help countries in wars in many ways as well. We adapt to that strategy. And that's what, in the 2022, that's what we're doing these days with Ukraine and Russia, adapting to what they're doing, changing our relationships, not declaring war, but, changing relationships in the day.
Yeah, it's very, very important. And guys, I'm just going to quickly, before we move on, play for you what life was like back in the 1st of September 1999 to a radio broadcast which shows you just what life was like when that announcement came through. Have a listen to this. This is a BBC radio broadcast.
Oh, sorry.
This is the national programme from London. First news, copyright reserved. At the end of this news, please stand by for a very important announcement. It will tell you of certain adjustments of BBC wavelengths affecting broadcasting throughout the United Kingdom as from that time onwards. These wavelength adjustments will result in less adequate reception for some listeners. Please take no alarm at this, as it results from purely technical considerations. Let me warn you again to stand by for this announcement at the end of this bulletin. These are today's main events. Germany has invaded Poland and has bombed many towns. General mobilization has been ordered in Britain and France. Parliament was summoned for 6 o'clock this evening. Orders completing the mobilization of the Navy, Army and Air Force were signed by the King at a meeting this afternoon of the Privy Council. Details will be given later in this news. The British Cabinet met from 11:30 this morning until 1:30, and both Houses of Parliament were summoned for 6 o'clock this evening. We hope to give the first part of Mr. Chamberlain's statement later in this news. France has decreed general mobilization and martial law. French Parliament is meeting today. Hostilities have been going on since early this morning along the frontiers between Germany and Poland. There is no news about the progress of either side. What news there is comes chiefly from the official broadcasting stations in Warsaw and Berlin. The German Supreme Command announced at 11:30 this morning that German troops had crossed all the frontiers, that the German Air Force had gone into action, and that the German Navy had taken charge of the Baltic. According to the Poles, it was at about 6 o'clock this morning that the first full-scale attacks began. These were air raids on big towns in the Corridor and Upper Silesia. The first towns to be bombed were Chef, Kursk, Torun, Białystok, and Grodno, Lodz, Katowice, and Krakow. It was earlier reported that in a big attack about 9 o'clock, Warsaw itself was bombed. Late this afternoon, messages were received in London official circles saying that no bombing had taken place up till noon. The Polish wireless this afternoon reported that there had been severe raids from East Prussia on Vilna and Gnitia. The Polish wireless also says that anti-aircraft fire drove off a German attack about 20 miles from Warsaw this morning, and that one of the German bombers was brought down.
Thank you there to a special report there from a BBC radio broadcast in the UK. Zach, how did you respond to that? What was going through your head when that was on being broadcasted on the BBC?
Wow. It just shows you how different the information was back then. It was all short bulletins, no rolling news. It was announcement through the lens of radio as well. But it was brief. It summed it up. They had a little information. But, in many of those days, I sort of compare the announcement to what we got when Ukraine started being invaded and what, Poland started being invaded. In many instances as well, like Poland being invaded, hearing like the words of the UK and French, people being general mobilization. At the end of the day, they would accept it. I don't think we'd accept this sort of thing these days. But that was the first sign that war had become when Germany invaded Poland and everyone got prescribed to join mobilization as well. So yeah, it obviously just the delivery of the news compared to what it was in the 39 compared to what was 22 is way different. And there have been a lot more reaction then. Didn't have social media, we didn't have computers. We just had a big audio and several announcements in them days. These days, you get a lot more information. You get lots of this intelligent sources all that time as well. So yeah, it's all a lot different.
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear what the news was on that war. We are going to do another one of them next month. There will be at least 2 of these special in the spotlights a month. And we will let you know when we will be doing them on my show. It won't be every week, but at least a couple a month. There will be special little history topics that we will be discussing on my show. Now, moving on to the sport briefing. Now, I'm going to be talking all about the PDC World Darts Championship now, which is taking place currently at the Alexandra Palace in London. This year, we have seen loads of entrants in the event. We know James Wade has already crashed out in the second round. The big shock there. But we want to go over for you some of the big results in the event, because trust me, guys, we have a lot to get through. Today, Joe Cullen continued his decent form, winning 4-1 today in his match. So well done to Joe Cullen for winning as well. That I think was in the morning session, if I'm correct there as well. Nathan Aspinall, though, lost 4-3 against Josh Rock in the morning session as well. There was Johnny Clayton, Johnny Clayton there winning 4-1 against Brendan Dolan. Nathan Aspinall winning 4-3 against... Josh Rock winning 4-3 against Nathan Aspinall. It was a big shot there. Josh Rock knocking out of one of the top seeds. Zach, what have you made so far to the World Darts Championship action?
I have to say I've managed to watch a lot more of it this year as well, and it's the darts that I've known to enjoy and get excited about, and that's a really good thing in many ways. But there's been a lot of obviously results happening. Obviously, it's been on for about over a week now. In fact, more than that, it's been on for 10. Actually, it's been on for 12 days. We've seen the easy luck for Peter Wright, Gary Henderson all make it through quite easily. But talk about today's results as well. Vincent van der Burg easily winning 4-1. It's also best of 7 now. Josh Rock, a rising star for Northern Ireland, who does a brilliant job. He had a good direct scrap with Nathan Aspinall today in a 4-3 victory for Josh Rock, though. It was fought very hard as well. Johnny Clayton as well. Another rising star. Well, a Grand Prix winner this season. As well, 4-1 victory in his game. And then there's also been later games as well today. There's been a couple of matches going on as well. Jim, I think it was, who was the other one? Gabriel Clements winning 4-3 against Jim William. And today's big match today has come via Gerwin Price and Raymond van Barneveld. Gerwin Price, the world number 1, has smashed Vincent van Barneveld 4-0 in the match today at the moment. That has just happened today as well. I believe, I don't know if there's any other matches going on at the moment. There must be other matches going on.
Peter Wright, I think, was playing.
Peter Wright is currently is now started to play against Kim Huiberts of Belgium as well. So that's currently just started, by the way. I should point out as well. But that's one of the matches that's on tonight. I think that's the final match of the night.
Yeah,
I believe at the moment as well. So yeah, that's happening there as well. I think what's tomorrow's matches? I'm just going to check what's going on tomorrow as well. So I'm just going to double check as well. So tomorrow, looking at it, Gary Anderson's in action in the afternoon. Michael van Gerwen is also in action as well. Michael Smith as well, also in action as well tomorrow. And also you may see the Austrian of Mees Surik as well. Mike van Gerwen against Surik that's going to be a good match. I'll tell you that something as well.
And also a good one as well. Dave Chisnell versus Stephen Bunting. This match, Dave Chisnell and Stephen Bunting, both British players looking quite sharp, actually, I have to say, as well. We also have Joe Cullen versus, I think, Damien Herter of Australia or New Zealand. We've got Gary Anderson playing Chris Dobie, and Alan Suter, who I have to say has been one of the stars of the tournament so far, takes on someone from the Netherlands, Dean Nopper. I'm not sure of his actual name, but yeah,
I think you can press on the actual thing and then you'll get
so
pop up.
there we go. We do have that. Danny Noppert will be playing Alan Suter, who has been really playing quite well, actually.
Yeah.
He is playing at 1:55 tomorrow at the Alexandra Palace. So you can catch up with all the World Darts Championship action by visiting the pdc.co.uk and also the World Darts Championship, watching it on Sky Sports Darts. If you want any action as well, there's afternoon and evening sessions available from the Alexandra Palace. Now it's time for the results of the football. Premier League results are coming in.
Yeah.
We are going to round up one match in a minute because Manchester United and Nottingham Forest is going into added time now. But United are 3-0 up, currently live at the moment at Old Trafford. But let's go through some of the big old Boxing Day results. Brentford, Tottenham drew 2-2. Southampton lost 3-1 against Brighton. Newcastle demolishing Leicester City 3-0. More pressure now on Brendan Rodgers at that club. Fulham surprisingly beating Crystal Palace quite comprehensively 3-0. Wolves 2-1 winners against Everton, putting more pressure on Frank Lampard's side. Liverpool winning 3-1 against Aston Villa to continue their decent run. And Arsenal beating West Ham 3-1 and Chelsea winning 2-0 at Bournemouth. Leeds and Manchester City play tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Zach, what have you taken away from some of the Boxing Day fixtures so far?
Yeah, it's been the first set of matches since the World Cup a week or so ago. It's actually been 12 days, if I'm correct in saying as well, since that has happened. It's been all sorts of results and action. Oh, actually, not 12 days, 8 days, 9 days, 8 days, 9 days, something like that as well. And let's look at the first set of results, really. I mean, Brentford 2-0 up in the first half, and then Tottenham did their little comeback. There's been a little trend with them to come back in the second half. Came from 2-0 down to draw 2-2. Need to start performing. I think Spurs, they're conceding too early these days as well. Brighton managed to get in their win on a new manager, 3-1 against Southampton as well. Newcastle are now second in the table, would you believe it or not? After winning 3-0 against Leicester City. Leicester have had a kind of upwards form recently, although losing 3-1 is not going to spark confidence in them at all. As that results, Fulham 3-0 against Crystal Palace, who got sent to 9 men after 2 red cards for them. And 3-0 win for Fulham is pretty, comprehensive in that manner as well. Palace, a few sets of suspensions now on the card for 2 of their players, unfortunately, in that instance. The other game that I watched, Everton Wolves, Wolves giving out a 90th minute goal to win 2-1, cost another costly loss for Frank Lampard. Liverpool managed to get much better form, 3-1 against Aston Villa. As well, I think it's one of the first defeats at Unai Emery in his Aston Villa era. Arsenal coming from 1 down to win 3-1 in the second half. 3 goals in the second half for Arsenal, comprehensively much better team there. And then there's been today's matches as well. Chelsea 2-0 win against Bournemouth. Early goals, good defend towards the end. Bournemouth a little bit better, but could do a bit more. And then a comprehensive victory for Manchester United 3-0. The matches in its final stage. I've got it on Prime at the moment whilst I'm speaking with you. In the last 20 seconds or so before of the game. And then tomorrow's match will be Leeds v Manchester City as well. And then for the New Year's games, we've got a few tasty games. West Ham Brentford on the Friday night, Liverpool Leicester on the Friday night as well. Then we've got Wolves Manchester United as well at 12:30. The other pick of the 3 p.m. games for me is Manchester City v Everton. As well, Brighton Arsenal on New Year's Eve at 5:30, and then the Sunday matches will be Tottenham Aston Villa, Nottingham Forest Chelsea, and then there's a Monday to Thursday set of matches as well, another set of match day as well, and it will conclude with Chelsea v Manchester City on the Thursday next week as well. So that is some of the matches that are coming up in the Premier League as well, and beyond as well as we get to the second half of the season.
Yep, second half of the season for the footy, it's going to be very, very interesting. Who do you think will win the league next season? But moving on now to Charlie's good news, chatting about a couple of things now. I just wanted to say on my first thing for Charlie's good news whilst I'm here, to everybody who took part with the Christmas celebrations this week. I just want to say Christmas 2022 couldn't be better than having our good old King Charles III doing a speech in front of the UK. Well done to him. To the 2022 Christmas celebrations, everyone took part really well. Anton Deck's Limitless Win came on the other day. I have to say, there was certainly a look around the world in terms of Christmas celebrations to everybody that took part with them all. I just wanted to say they were certainly very, very interesting. These are all some of the photographs here of what happened. This was in Ukraine as well, where they've had the war. Someone dressed in a church, basically to processions in Bethlehem. The surfers dressed as Santa Claus. I tell you what, it's quite an emotional image, seeing all these, especially Ukraine marking Christmas in a war as well. Pope Francis decries war in his Christmas Eve Mass. The Pope emphasises the plight of children. Bethlehem Christmas celebrates return of tourists. Ceremonies kick off in the Holy Land. Italy, they're celebrating with someone dressed as Santa Claus. I love this. Probably one of my favourite things this week in southwestern state of US Florida. I'll tell you what, keep that in touch later on for that. Some snow there. Germany's tractor pasta as well. And also some people in China taking selfies. So very, very interesting. Zach, what have you made for this year's Christmas celebrations?
Well, yeah, I mean, it looks like a peaceful celebration and our traditional celebrations. Obviously, being in Ukraine, it's been a little bit different with the war going on. But they've managed Christmas very well there, I have to say, as well. I mean, they've managed to celebrate Christmas, even with air raid sirens going off. They managed to get some events in as well. It's just been great to see them celebrating as usual. Great to see everyone celebrating very peaceful and happy Christmas where they are as well. It's been another good set of celebrations. And the King's speech, by the way, was excellent. I really enjoyed listening to the Charles's first speech as King. He did an effective job. Remember, obviously, he was talking about the loss of his mother. Very obviously, very moving that was. He was also thanking the NHS, the public health service, the police, as well. And he also talked about his obviously the faith of Christianity and believing in God, obviously in many religious ways, as well. But it was a good first speech for King Charles as you know, as King in his first Christmas speech.
Yeah, it's going to be that was very interesting day. But also coming up on Charlie's Good News is the Formula E testing. Because of how much this show has got tonight, I thought I'd cram it into my good news. Zach, what did you make to testing in Formula E? I have to say, Maserati looking quick.
They're good. We're looking good, Charlie. No doubt about it. It starts in a few weeks' time, but yeah, it's looking good. Obviously, different cars, new technology, new rules, and drivers gonna have to adapt. And it proves Maserati at times look the best adapted. Cars are not as fast yet, but yeah, they'll be. Whether they're raceable is going to be another thing with all these new rules as well. They look good. They sound good. Bring it on. 2023 is going to be interesting for Formula E.
Yeah, I just want to quickly, guys, go over some of the Formula E news that's coming in regarding driver changes. As you guys would have known, we announced some of these back earlier on a couple of months ago, or a few weeks ago now. Just going to go over some of them whilst we're here. Me and Zach will quickly go over them again. So Robin Fries, Nico Muller at Cupra. Andretti is Jake Dennis, Andre Lotterer, Jean-Eric Vernon, Stoffel Van Dorn will team up at DS Penske. In Vision version, Nick Cassidy, Sebastian Buemi swapping Nissan E-Dams. And Jaguars, that the only team remaining unchanged with Mitch Evans and Sam Bird staying on.
Yeah, continuity there. The rest of them are all changed because of teams renaming, teams leaving, teams joining. We know McLaren's joined this year as well. Maserati renamed their team as well. We've also, there's been a few changes now and then, but yeah, it feels quite different. This season's going to feel quite different as well with new drivers and everything like that. Porsche also made an effort to get involved with Formula E as well. Nissan, it's going to be a good year, I think, Charlie, with all these changes, and can't wait for the action, which we're getting with a double header. I think it's a double header in Mexico. I think it is as well. For 2 races in Mexico on the weekend as well. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, calendar starts in Mexico City on the 14th of January. There's the calendar up there for you guys. Concludes at the end of July with the race in London, which we can't wait for as well. That's a brief little overview there of the Formula E races. Now it's time for the papers. We're still going to continue chatting, obviously, with our festive our heroes and villains of the year, where we renamed the segment, but we're now going to go to the latest newspaper headlines now. I thought to myself, we still have to talk about the latest developments. Now, there's been a lot of developments over in some other military action as well regarding Cavoso, regarding China as well. There's been lots of other news. So we're going to go over that later at some other date. But the Daily Mirror goes for new NHS warning. Junior doctor strike fear. 2/3 look at quitting their job over actions. Yes, there's more ambulance strikes coming in January. God hell, what's going to happen for the health service? And does Hasma Youssef in Scotland have to resign over 12-hour A&E waits? Very interesting. The Independent goes with that huge snow bomb in the United States, as I mentioned earlier. Food bank donations fall despite a tsunami of need. Financial Times goes, Beijing scraps travel quarantine rules in a firm break with zero COVID policy rules. This does come after China, though, did send China are planning on a possible invasion of Taiwan at some point as well. There was also other developments in the news regarding South Korea shooting down drones that North Korea sent into their airspace. What did you make to the latest papers?
Yeah, we only got 4 papers out at the moment, unfortunately. But given the fact it's obviously, being the festive period to New Year, papers might be a little bit
And the
slower.
eyes just come out as well.
Yeah, the eyes just come out as well. So we might have a little slowdown of papers coming in throughout, but that doesn't matter to me. Many fairness. Let's begin with the Eye, who are talking about train strikes set to escalate as union plans daily walkouts. Thousands of rail workers will be balloted again on strike action, and a new tactic to increase the number of major walkouts across the transport network to multiple consecutive days. Oh my goodness me! You think the amount of strikes going on is bad? Then think about daily walkouts. That's another thing as well. Union leaders reveal plans to poll different groups of workers separately, allowing rolling strikes throughout the same week and cause a maximum disruption to rail passengers. Transport Staff Association will a new phase of mass impact. Small business owners tell I sales owing to Royal Mail strikes. And the net, I was talk about the fact that the North East Ambulance Service declared a critical incident for the second day time in 9 days as well. So yeah, they're also talking about the strikes again. I mean, this has been one of the themes this year as well. Is that the pay rises? This has been one of those themes again this year, Charlie, where where our workers are not being paid enough. Public sector workers have had very little pay rises. There have been small pay rises. Some of them have been small, and that's caused union workers to walk out. Those that are part of the union have walked out on strikes, onto picket lines, demanding that that their pay gets increased. At the moment, but yeah, it's been one of those fears this year as well, and it's not going to change. I don't think 23 unless inflation gets under control as well. We're going to continue to see these mass walkouts. We're going to see people on picket lines. We're going to see people withdrawing their labour, and there will be pressure. Then we may see the year where unions and government continue to clash even more, with the possibility of minimum service legislation. That looks possible as well. I mean, that's going to be a big story as well going into next year as well, especially with the train strikes, with the nurses strikes, the ambulance strikes, the border strikes, the airport strikes. Just so many strikes going on, Charlie. Absolutely, so many of them going on. The Daily Mirror goes for junior doctors strike fear, 2/3 looking at quitting their job as ballot over action looms. Rising discontent among junior doctors, fueling concerns they will strike. 2/3 of junior doctors are looking at quitting that job. Now think about that, Charlie. If that is the case, then our workforce goes in complete crisis. Our NHS is a crisis. It is. Our nurses are struggling as it is. And if 2/3 of the ones that have been polled quit, we are looking at a really serious meltdown, a complete collapse of our NHS service. And that is no good for us, for people who are looking to get appointments, surgeries, injuries, possibly death in many ways that these people are facing. The solution, I think, is to give people the workers the pay rises that they really need. But and I think that's a very simple thing. But obviously, the health secretary is one of those big idiots that turned out to refuse to negotiate. Really, to be fair, I mean, you can disagree with the union sometimes. Union strategies, I mean, that's fair and understandable. But my opinion is pay these people, pay them more, pay them. I mean, yeah, if there's inflation, I completely understand the purpose of it. But there are serious issues that need to be sorted out by the government between public sector workers and themselves this year, next season as well. The Independent goes for food bank donations fall despite two tsunami of need. Food bank managers have warned the government that a tsunami of need could see them forced to turn hungry families away as donations fall, whilst demand rises in the cost of living crisis as well. That is very interesting. I suspect in many ways it's down to the fact that people are just looking for the food. People can't afford to donate. So whilst there's an increasing use of food banks, there's no way to afford donating to these food banks as well, I'm afraid. And the result is that food banks themselves are actually running their out of money to actually manage the situation. And it could get to the point where they turn away innocent people, people that really do need it. And that is kind of probably a possible sad situation in this country, that we're getting close to that. It really is. The Financial Times go for Beijing scraps travel quarantine rules and firm break zero COVID policy. I imagine this is because the people don't like the zero COVID policy. The zero COVID policy has now become, it looks like by China's own actions, intolerable, unacceptable, and just simply doesn't work now in this day and age. And completely not surprising given the fact they've refused vaccines. They're relying on trying to get their own made vaccines. But in many ways, it's the people that have turned against zero COVID, and that's forced in Beijing and basically the Xi government to basically reconsider at the moment. So they've scrapped the travel quarantine rules. In some instances, you may not need to isolate now, even if you have COVID, as long as if you don't explain any symptoms, you may not need to isolate. So yeah, China is basically going back to the model of what many other countries have in terms of COVID now. They're going to eventually treat it like it's just a normal illness. So yeah, I mean, it's finally Beijing have U-turn on this, but it took them a while, and it took a protest from the people and unrest for them to change their mind. That's shocking as well. Let's see if we've got any other papers out as well, because it is a bit. Oh yes, the Guardian have just come up with their paper. Charities forced to shut up shop as Brexit hits funding. And now the Guardian blaming Brexit for charities here. Regional aid misses out after delays in allocating new money. Hundreds of volunteer organisations have been forced to shut up shop or scale back operation because of government delays in replacing EU funding. Now that's interesting. I think that possibly our relationship with the EU is going to come into question again next year, given the fact that there's a growing popularity for people to rejoin the single market. And the fact that people don't feel that the government is maximising the opportunities of Brexit so far. So the fact that some areas are not getting their funding just shows that discontent as well, I'm afraid, from what regional areas need at the moment. It's not very good. So the issue is going to come under question, I think next year as well. Ministers accused of failing over PPE fraud as well. Ministers are accused of making a pitfall attempt to recoup taxpayers' money on fraudulent COVID contracts. You may have seen a lot of these. Michelle Malone, one of those ones that own owns a company that takes PPE contracts, been profiting from it. she's been one of the disgraces this year. Certainly about that. But yeah, I think it's time for the money to return to the taxpayer because it's quite disgraceful as well. And then whilst we don't have today's one at the moment, the Daily Star's yesterday's comedy front page called "A Blizzard of Lizards." The Daily Star reports that iguanas are falling from trees in the US as a result of extreme winter weather.
Yeah.
On a serious note, that's bad for wildlife. Snow. They're going to have to be rehomed with these people. But the fact is, not people, these animals, they've got no home at the moment, which is really sad to see because of the blizzards. So yeah, that's really sad to see as well. The Daily Express also yesterday as well bashed the fact that BBC spends out £7 million on new logos. £7 million that have been on logos that have already been there for a couple of months. The Daily Express haven't noticed, but obviously they've obviously just seen the sums for it. A digital rebrand that BBC undertook earlier this year cost the corporation £7 million. Do you think that's the same amount that Sky obviously pay as well for their rebrands, or ITV? I wonder how much the ITV rebrand cost earlier this year as well. Not just the BBC that does these rebrands as well, the Daily Express as well. But yeah, that's the papers for today. For tomorrow, actually, there doesn't appear to be any more that come out at the moment. Obviously, we looked at the Mail HE Legacy. According to Mail, recruitment agency charge the NHS £50 million a year for agency staff. That's appalling. Middle class household lose up to £40,000 a year due to government stealth tax. That's according to the Times. Telegraph, energy company hoarding customers billions. Yeah, I'm not surprised about that. Unfortunately, they are greedy idiots. And the Independent goes through a article. What do UK really think about strikes? We don't know. They've just got a massive front page of that at the moment. But yeah, that is the papers for yesterday, for today, and tomorrow.
Plenty of papers there. We have tons of them already out there. I'm trying to refresh. Can't see anymore. We'll let you know. And Zach, before we move on and do the heroes and villains of the year, what have you made to the events happening in Kosovo, Serbia, and also the Japan and South Korea? There's been a lot of escalation, I think, over these couple of conflicts that have been on recently.
Yeah, I mean, North Korea have decided to fly a drone over Seoul. In South Korea, South Korea, one of the planes crashed whilst trying to intercept that drone. I don't think there's any injuries or casualties as a result of that, but yeah. There may well continue to be an escalation next year. It may just will be the usual back and forth. It could be a further escalation next year. Serbia and Kosovo have also come to clashes. Now, I don't quite understand what that's about. But yeah, there is clashes at the moment. It's over the bulk increasingly strained relation neighbouring Kosovo over recent shootings or a blockade as well. So it looks like there's a conflict between those two countries at the moment. And that's why we've got all these blockades and army tanks coming over and defending themselves as well. So yeah, that's what's going on there at the moment, and it's not a pretty sight at all at the moment in Kosovo and Serbia.
Loads of this, please. No more wars. I do not want more conflicts, please. This is horrible. Look what's happening in Ukraine, just to basically see what's happening. But moving on now, guys, to the new segment which has been out, or a rebranded segment from Stars and Red Devils to Heroes and Villains. Yes, we're going to be going through some of the heroes and villains of 2022 as well as the heroes and villains this week. I'm going to go through some of my political heroes of 2022. I have them here on my list. I can tell you now straight away that I have got tons of stuff to read up. So some of the heroes worth considering were Ron DeSantis, Giorgia Meloni of Italy. Actually been quite a decent leader, I have to say, in Italy, standing up against the EU on a lot of issues. Lee Anderson's been Lee Anderson being voted backbencher of the year, getting my nomination for that. And I also want to give it to anyone who's took part in charity fundraising this year as well. Anybody who's raised money for charity, children in need as well. And also, guys, as well, just quickly, this is my hero of the week, or this heroes of the week, is a Telford company smashes past £100,000 mark, raising money for charity.
Okay.
It's a generously minded Telford-based company has passed £100,000 for its charity efforts. Millions recruiter Encore personnel based in Wellington in the year and ending the year on a high by celebrating more than £7,000 fundraising for 2022 chosen charities, bringing all this total to £117,000 in there. In January, Encore chose to support Blind Veterans UK and Junior Diabetes and Research Foundations as well. They also held a numberous group events, including a charity golf tournament. It was an 18-hole event played at Wrecking Golf Club, where each player playing £20 entered a chance to bat out for a trophy, raffle prize as well. I have to say, this is a very, very fantastic way of raising money for charity by holding special events, golf events, just basically fundraising, anything to help out local communities. So for me, they get my Hero of the Week award, and the other heroes, as I mentioned, they're on the list. My villains of the week. Well, my villains of the year were definitely Vladimir Putin and Russia as well for causing the horrendous war in Ukraine, condemned worldwide by many Western leaders and all worldwide leaders. The war is causing countless lives right now, guys. Sadly to report, since the start of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I'm sad to report that at least 42,295 people have been killed since the start of Putin's barbaric war in Ukraine as well, which is a pretty horrifying. So my thoughts are with all those who've lost loved ones in Ukraine. No question. Also getting a nomination is Alexander Lukashenko, the Belarusian president, for allowing migrants to travel over to the UK, crossing through different countries, and also for his involvement with Putin as well. Another nomination goes to Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, for his dictatorial regime, causing Taiwan some concern, and also with zero COVID. And my shock one on the list is Boris Johnson getting my nomination. Boris Johnson got my nomination of the Villain of the Year for, basically destroying the Conservative Party in his later stages by hiring Chris Pincher to govern as a sex pest and for lockdown drinks as well. You could argue that in context. So they are my villains. My villain of the week, though, is going to go exclusively to someone who is dealing with the Russian. Actually, my villain of the week is Rishi Sunak. I said I'll mention Rishi. Dealing with he spoke to a homeless person at a shelter and said a very interesting question to the homeless person. Did he say, "Are you in business or something?"
Yeah.
That was a very awkward exchange Rishi Sunak had, the Prime Minister, with a homeless person. Not ideal, Rishi. Sorry, you got my villain of the week there nomination. Zach, what are your nominations for the heroes and villains of 2022, including yours of the week as well?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really thought about ones for the week really, as well. It's been a bit of a difficult one to think of really, because I've mainly focused on what my mind of what be the ones of 2022. So I'll leave it for that. So I'll just concentrate on the ones of the 2022. So my heroes this year, Volodymyr Zelensky, the people of Ukraine, no doubt about it. They're it's easy, that one. I mean, they've been showing resilience, outstandingness, just done so well throughout this war and everything like that. They've just proved that, they can continue on. They can, outfight Russia and everything like that. Just brilliant job overall as well. Another one I'm going to give to as well is the people of Iran, the girls of Iran, for basically upholding their rights as a woman, and for basically, coming close to overthrowing the Iranian regime, the dictatorships there that have been ruining women's rights as well. I mean, it's pretty clear as well. Another one I'm going to give it to is the Lionel Messi of Argentina as well. I mean, bloody hell. I mean, he's just been doing absolutely brilliant throughout the year. I mean, if you look at the World Cup, that's just an outstanding job and becoming history, getting his World Cup at last. I mean, it's been well deserved in many ways. We're looking at it as well. I also going to give it as well. Another hero as well for me is the England women's football team. Wow, outstanding. The fact that it came home at last. It's a shame it wasn't the men's. But it was the women's. It was the women's team at last that brought it home at the Euros.
And
Just
Jill Scott winning
simply-
I'm a Celebrity as well.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Jill Scott gets also another mention as well. For me, just simply outstanding job as well. But yeah, there's some of the heroes of the years for me. Well, the villains of the year, obviously Vladimir Putin, as well. That's one of them. Boris Johnson and Liz Truss also get villains of the year for me. I mean, they're pretty simple in terms of while as well. Chris Pincher, as well. I mean, for being a total sex pest and completely destroying the Conservative Party, as well. Iran, North Korea, you could add them to the list as well. The bloke, I'm going to also give it to the bloke. I'm going to give it recently to the bloke that run that cryptocurrency, as well, who's been arrested in the Bahamas, completely defrauding people in crypto, total fraud, total idiot in many ways, as well, many frauds, as well, and Donald Trump is another one that gets the villain of the year for me as well. I mean, he's just winning all sorts of rights, but bloody hell, I mean, he's just becoming irrelevant. And that's good in many ways, I think as well. I also had now, so that's the villains of the year for me as well. I'm just trying to think who else can I add as a hero. So I'm just trying to think who else
Probably
could be possible.
I'm gonna give one more of mine, which is anyone who voted for strikes this year as well, over pay. I think people need to understand that pay is important at the same time, but causing disruption like the RMT and NHS bosses and that you are causing disruption by not working. You're effectively trying to lose your jobs.
Yeah. I kind of like see different perspective. Obviously, they're there to get their pay rise and everything like that. And I don't like disruption, but I also sympathetic to their causes as well. Another hero this year: nurses, doctors, ambulance workers, everybody on the public sector, frontline. Brilliant job of them, as well. So yeah, that's my heroes and villains of the year for you, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you, Zach, there for your nominations. And that is all we got time for on the 2022 highlights for the Charlie Tolhurst show. I thank you for everyone who has literally had a fantastic year this year. I'm so happy for us. We're dedicating this show, of course, to Queen Elizabeth this year, though, for brilliant service. She, for me, is our royal memory of the year. Harry and Meghan are down in the dumps at the moment, so all I can say is that Queen Elizabeth II, rest in peace. You are a true inspiration to this country, and everyone as well in this UK. And thank you so much for watching the Charlie Tolhurst show this year. It's been a great show. I'm happy to bring you on more political news every week throughout the year, and we're all going to do it again in January. It will be probably next Saturday. We're hoping next Saturday will be the next air episode, guys. The New Year celebrations will kick in over the weekend, so we won't be on air during the New Year. So it will be about a week on Saturday that we will go live again for another show. Providing all things run smoothly, we'll be back on a week on Saturday for another show whilst we enjoy over the rest of the festive period and the New Year celebrations. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Take care. And I'm Charlie Tolhurst. This is the Charlie Tolhurst Show, live on YouTube. Thank you for watching. Take care and good night.